Not billion, not million, trillion. That's one more reason why defaulting on our debt to make a point about fiscal responsibility makes so little sense. If we default, it will actually cost the nation more to meet our financial obligations in the future, and that's a gross understatement. Democrats believe we must create jobs and get our economy moving again. We must cut spending and live within our means. We all know that. And we must eliminate tax loopholes for millionaires, billionaires, oil companies. Republicans must not put the economy of this country and the world at risk for the sake of protecting special interests and the big donors. It's time we return to the type of fiscal discipline Democrats brought to Washington in the 90s, when Democrats in Congress and the White House balanced the budget and used the surplus to do what, Mr. President? To pay down the debt. We were being criticized for paying down the debt too fast. President Bush changed that very, very quickly. But a default crisis would do nothing to get our fiscal house in order. Instead, default, in effect bankruptcy, would derail our fragile economic recovery and plunge this nation and the world back into not just a recession, but a full-blown depression. I said that earlier. That's the truth. It would also risk millions of Americans' jobs, tax refunds, Social Security checks, Medicare payments, and paychecks for our troops. There was a nice report written day before yesterday by Alice Rivlin and one of George Bush's assistant secretaries of the Treasury. And they said the same thing, but in much more detail. And frankly, Mr. President, reading that was very, very frightening. Those risks are simply not worth taking. Today, middle-class families in America are struggling to survive economically. They're living paycheck to paycheck in many instances. Meanwhile, Republicans walked away from the negotiations. And why did they walk away from the negotiations that would have cut the deficit and averted a catastrophic default? They did it in order to protect tax breaks for millionaires and billionaires. That's obvious. Republicans are willing to risk our economy to protect tax breaks for corporations that ship jobs overseas. Meanwhile, average Americans are struggling to find work here at home. Republicans are willing to risk our economy and to protect tax breaks for owners of corporate jets and yachts and oil companies, while the average American is struggling to afford gas for their cars. Republicans are willing to risk our economy to protect tax breaks for millionaires and billionaires, and average Americans are struggling to make their mortgage payments for their homes. I've said it before. Republicans simply have the wrong priorities. They have made their mission to stand up and shout for the rich.